Have you ever thought of becoming a video editor? A video is composed of many different factors. Editing is perhaps one of the most important factors when it comes to creating any video. As hectic as it might seem, editing videos can be one of the most entertaining and fun things you can ever do. Hello, my name is QB, a professional editor with more than 4 years worth of experience, and today I will be answering general questions that other editors and content creators have asked me so that we can all hopefully learn together and improve our skills too. Before we start, do keep in mind that what applies to me might not apply to you at all. After all, it is all about trial and error and what you see fits with your own editing style. Our first question comes from @SamIDPlayer1. This may not be a question related to editing. When I want to become a professional editor or clipper like you, what should I do to get clients faster? What I know is to create a portfolio and post it on one of the platforms as well as offering it to creators. Is there any better way? The number one tip and goal that I would say every editor or creator should always put in their mind is to just first of all attempt doing the craft. Attempt editing, see what you can do and what you can produce. After you're comfortable with doing some small edits or even small memes to begin with, what I would heavily suggest is finding a niche where you can excel in. As an example, my editing style is more catered towards ADHD moments as well as very fast-paced editing. And while having a portfolio can be really good and really amazing when it comes to having clients commission you, if you do not put yourself out there and start creating the content to begin with, people would not know about you nor your portfolio in general. So in terms of is there a better way, I would say this is a good starting point. However, there needs to be more of a social presence added so that more eyes can see your clips and edits and eventually help you boost your client intake as well. Moving on to the next question, and we have @TiwiCat, and they say, "Hello QB, I have a less of a technical question. How do you come up with ideas for an edit? And what is your approach? Let's say someone clipped an interesting moment and you decide to make an edit out of it. Is it possible to create edits out of every clip?" Yes, it is possible to edit every single clip. And I only am saying this because that is what I have been doing ever since I started editing. While I can be extremely picky with my own content, when it comes to creating content of others, I always try to find a way to make it funny. Even if the moment could be perhaps stale or very normal, an edit can eventually and potentially increase the possibility of turning it into an extremely fun video for people to consume. And as for coming up with ideas, I would just generally say it kind of just comes to me. The more videos I watched and the more references that I watched, the more open-minded I got when it came to getting ideas. And as for my general approach, I would watch the clip more than once and see a minute before and after the clip happened to get some more context of what I should be looking at and what should I expect, specifically with clients who I have never worked with before or channels that I am not a very big regular at, because I am not very well aware of the inside jokes or any other jokes that could potentially make the video 10 times better, but I could at least try to indulge myself within the moment to understand how it works and what should be done with it in general. And the last point I would like to add for this question is, all content is good content. It just depends on your perspective and how you want to portray it to others. Moving on to the next question, we have @BrainyEpic. Can you buy me a burger? No, you should buy me a burger. The next question we got is from Liliana Quinn. What are some of your go-to effects? I always struggle to know the name of effects and it holds me back from learning a lot. Some of my go-to effects are always making the head of the VTuber bigger, which is what I would call a spherization, as well as changing the tint, making it look more like an old school video. However, recently I've been enjoying messing around with glitches a lot, creating a more subtle yet corrupted footage. Combining that with some corrupted audio as well, it could turn out to be an extremely powerful combination as well. As for struggling to finding the names of the effects, that is unfortunately one of the major downsides of video editing, as a lot of the names and effects cannot be reached by normal means unless you have someone who knows about them or you have something specific in mind. So never fear asking people about what effects they use, because trust me when I tell you, it does matter a lot, and a lot of the community members are actually very nice people, so they would like to help you no matter what. Give it a shot, you never know what you might get out of it. Moving on to the next question, we have @ABIST asking, what are the names of more common sound effects and what the thought process on which ones to use and when to use them? A general tip that I always have in mind whenever I am choosing sound effects, let them be common or uncommon, is to check famous cartoon, anime, TV, general shows that are portrayed on any media, because a lot of times those sound effects are free to use. And as for the thought process behind using them, usually I circulate between 5 to 10 sound effects before finally deciding on using one. And after producing well over 1,500 videos, I just kind of have like a general library in my brain as to when to use what and how to use it. Naturally, when I first started, I would put more than one sound effect and test them one by one to see which one worked for the entire program that I'm doing or for the moment that I'm working with right now. As at the end of the day, context really defines what sound effects you will be using. Our next question comes from @ZKEspen. What sort of advice/tip did you wish you learned sooner as you started to learn video editing? Anything that's specific from the type of shorts editing that you do? How about the long form editing? If there's one major tip that I wish somebody forced into my head when I first started editing, it would be to value your own health over anything else. What a lot of people might not know about me is that I used to be a clipper for a good part of a year and a half, and I used to edit somewhere between 3 to 4 videos in a day because I thought that was the way to grow my presence on social media as well as to grow around in the VTubing community. And all that has done to me is made me develop carpal tunnels in both of my arms and extreme sleep deprivation because I was working non-stop to produce videos day and night. So always value your health. No matter how good or how interesting the edit might be, if you're not healthy, it is not worth it. Trust me on that. And as for a tip that is more related to editing in general, I would have to say to try and learn the ratio of your video. It is extremely important to be able to at least visualize where the main topic of the video will be or where the subtitles will pop up, no matter the video format. And to help with that, there is a very neat thing called safety boundary or safety border. By doing that, you'll start to see small lines which are the boundaries of the clip that you're working with. And those will be your main guidelines. By learning how to utilize those and how to use them, you'll be able to see and visualize where the subtitles will pop up, where anything that might move into the screen will stay, and where your main context, which is either the game or the creator themselves, will be a lot of the times. Moving on to the next question we got @SirCatClips. How can I be as cute of an editor as you? Something related to how small changes like adding BGMs, slight cuts to different footages, zooms, and subtle sound effects can make a ton of differences instead of just adding a bunch of effects. Think of it this way, when you are creating a video, it should also have harmony. No matter how fast-paced or how short-paced it might be, you need to always understand that no matter what you add, it will create an effect, big or small, to the viewer and to the video itself. So don't try to force a lot of sound effects into the video. Instead, try to see what is right or what feels right rather. Usually to see if a video is right or not, I would ask friends and even sometimes family members to see as a bystander or a third person if the video is too much or too little, and what do they think might be better to be added. Because at the end of the day, they are the people who are viewing the video. Even if they don't know what you're making, they are viewers, and their feedback could also be amazing and could change the videos drastically. And if you have a client that you're working with, always ask them for suggestions. Even though you are the editor, having them be involved and hands-on with the content, if they allow it, is a great plus to any edit you're going to be creating. Moving on to the next question, we got at Mumbo Man asking, sound effects have always been my interest. While sound that replicate noises are usually highly demanded, I find the market for rings, dings, and chimes to be lacking. How do you find I search for sound effects without being flooded by meme compilations or writing think in the search bar? On my end, what helps me out the most is knowing the instrument that I'm going for. A perfect example is wind chimes. I love wind chimes a lot as I find them very calming. Yet I'm not very knowledgeable with musical instruments or even slight instruments that might make sound effects. So, while I might be guilty of writing dings or tings on YouTube to find specific sound effects, I also try to find websites, if possible, that offer multiple ranges of sound effects with wide variety, and usually those websites have places for instruments as well, and that is where I go to test and see if there is anything that might pique my interest. Even though while I rarely use such sound effects, it is important to note that there are a lot of effects which might feel like they are rings or dings, but in reality they are completely different and are under a completely different name. It just might feel that way to us editors in general. A great example would be the Pokemon introduction sound effect that a lot of creators use. Nobody would expect it to be called a ring or a ding because it is from an anime, a Pokemon anime, which goes to show you that there's a lot of possibilities and potential things you can find in the most uncommon places or uncommon ways as well. Our next question comes from Verpian, and they ask, I don't understand how to mix my audio correctly for YouTube. I just use the normalization tool in Resolve, but I don't know how loud I should record my voice so it doesn't get drowned by the background music. It is so confusing. While I might not be the best when it comes to sound effects, as I try to learn as I'm going with every single video, but what I do whenever I record myself to avoid being put in such a situation is to always repeat myself 2 times, 3 times, sometimes even 4 times or more, until I get a good variety of ranges which I could mix and match with different audio levels to create something that I might like. And always remember that whenever you're putting a BGM into any video, the goal of the BGM is not to be overwhelming your voice or the game's voice, but rather to provide a subtle and calm atmosphere around the video. So it should always be reduced to the point where it is audible, but it is not overcoming any other sound effect heavily or your own voice. Our next question comes from @BeepTappy, and they ask, how do you usually source a stock image or footage? I always try to find different media or places which provide me with general stock footage that is free to use, such as the website Pixabay, which has a lot of free resources from sound effects, images, and even background music that you can use. Our next question comes from @onlyricky_x, and their question is a two-way question, and they are asking, my biggest question is, where do you start? As in, when you look at a clip, how do you determine the direction it goes and what should be done? As for the second question, how do you know when you are done with editing a clip? So, to answer the first question simply, whenever I'm editing a video or whenever I see a clip for the first time, I start to think about how could this be done. Now, there are multiple ways a singular video could be edited in, but I always try to limit myself by saying, alright, this is what I need to do, and I just need to focus on one thing only, because I know very well that if I give myself a lot of freedom, I'm never gonna be done. And that has happened to me quite a lot, where a lot of my videos were scrapped or scratched entirely because I was uncertain about how I wanted to edit it. A good way to go around this is to say to yourself, all styles are good, all methods are good, all directions are good, but I would like to choose this one direction. Reason being, I just feel like it. That way, you trick yourself into believing that this is the perfect direction, as well as you are proceeding forward. And at the end of the day, since it's a trial and error period, either with yourself or on YouTube or wherever you want to post, you will be learning as you're going to determine how a video should go. This is one of the heavily related questions to the concept of trial and error, because the more you edit, the more this becomes easier and it becomes clearer as well, since you'll be doing the same edits almost always in a lot of the cases, but with different sound effects, or perhaps by mixing and matching more than one effect. The more you go, the easier it will get, and the more simpler you will start to see it. As for your second question, I know that I'm done with my clip whenever I am done with the clip. Whenever I see the timeline reaching the end, I stop, I zoom out, I watch it a couple of times, and then I tell myself if I'm not feeling right about it, alright, I will ask the client, I will send them a preview and see their point of view. If they like it, then that's that. And if they don't, I can always change it to something that they are gonna be aware of or something that they might like more. Always ask around, always be open about taking criticism, and always be open about change. As long as it's not a major change where you have to start from scratch, it should relatively be fine. And a very good thing to note with this question is to always limit yourself a bit. It's good to be great at editing, but at the same time, you need to have your own system. My current system is I don't do anything sound effect related until I am done with the visual effects, because the visual for me will decide what kind of sound effects I'll be using and the intensity of it. Is it possible to change the visuals after the sound effects? Quite possibly so, but at that point, I will know I'll be changing a small slight thing, but not the entire context, because I'll be saying to myself, oh, I have already finished it, why should I do it? I'll just see if I can fix it one way or another. And that usually leads me to creating the videos that I create normally. Our next question comes from @IgnesEntity. And they ask, do keyframing a good source for sound effects and transition? Now, honestly, I don't know if this is a question or a request to show some of my keyframes. Either ways, I'll be showing some keyframes over here, as well as talk about them a bit. When it comes to keyframing, it's always important to know what kind of keyframes you want and how you want to utilize them. I'm no professional when it comes to keyframing, since I use the bare minimum and make do with them, and that is just how it works with me. But keyframing is very, very important, because at least by understanding it, you can create some of the most complicated and most sophisticated things in the least amount of time. And sometimes even by mixing and matching different things, you can create some of the most interesting effects that you never knew you could actually make. It could control the speed, it could control the time, it could also control different visual effects. For example, I use it with opacity or with tinting, as well as the motion of the frame when it comes to transitioning, and it can be used for many outlets as well. Our next question comes from @HimeHimari, and they ask, any tips for making subtitles without having to pay for another app to generate them? Now, I know some of my friends would chew me out for this, but how I create subtitles is by actually typing every single one of them. I have a preset that I have created by mixing and matching keyframes to generate the transition of the subtitles into the frame and out of the frame if needed. However, typing them is something that I've always wanted to do, because even when you're typing them, that could add to the visual effects of the video. So sometimes you might not add visual effects, but you might add subtitles with visual effects on them to create something unique and something unexpected as well. So my suggestion would be, create a singular subtitle that you are satisfied with and start copying into whatever video you're using. Just change the outline or the strokes around it to get a different color, and that should usually be okay when it comes to using subtitles in any video. At the end of the day, subtitles are a luxury, they're not a must, but if you're using them, might as well use them in a way which could help elevate the visual effects as well as create an experience for the reader or for the viewer without distracting them as much. Our next question comes from @Spoody78676581, and they ask, what is the difference between fast-paced video and slow-paced video editing? The difference is quite simple. Fast-paced videos are usually videos with a lot of sound effects, a lot of visual effects. You cannot grasp what is happening a lot of the times, but it is very interesting and it catches people's attention for short-form content more than anything else. However, for slow-paced editing, it is usually meant for more longer content, videos where you want to sit down and watch the whole thing. And that is mainly because you want to build up the video slowly as it passes. sometimes even adding different segments, an introduction, a middle, a climax, references at the end, or how you got inspired to make such a video. But I would say the major factor that a lot of people notice when it comes to the difference between fast-paced editing and slow-paced video editing, that would be sound effects and the extreme use of them, as well as transitions or zooms, in or out. Our next question comes from @Joshua Curtis, and they ask, when to do a motion graphic? Timing on zoom in, zoom out, timing on key burns and dynamic zooms. How can I pay my taxes this month? Now, for the timing of zooming in and zooming out, I would just simply say, try to go at least 3 or 4 frames after the beginning of the segment and have that be the main segment where the transitions will happen. What I usually do is I overlap 2 videos on top of each other and use that as a segment way to transition the old video to the new video by having those 3 or 4 frames from the new video move in as the last 3 or 4 frames of the old video are playing. This way it creates a seamless transition as well as a very slight movement with the correct keyframes, of course. Now, if you want a slight usage of motion graphic, a scale in or a scale out on a long term could be your go-to in that case. Our next question comes from @Robson Demon Fox, and they ask, does the software matter a lot? Because, for example, I use CapCut. The general answer that I always tell people is no, it does not matter. Use whatever you're comfortable with, because at the end of the day, all of them work. The functionality might be different, but if you learn to use one software, then that is the software that you're going to be working with. And you better be sure that it's going to be your best friend until you learn another software if you want to learn that. Just always know that all softwares have their pros and cons. Our next question comes from @BaldyFox, and they have a 2-way question that says, 1. What is the most common plugins you'd use for DaVinci? 2. What font do you like to use? To answer the first question, I don't really use DaVinci, so I have no idea what kind of plugins I'd use. I do love the Fusion feature in DaVinci, and if there's anything that might make me switch from Premiere Pro to DaVinci, it would be the Fusion feature, honestly. As for the second question, what fonts do I like to use? Usually something that is readable. I am not very picky with fonts. Whatever I find, I use. It could be different for every video. It could be different based on the client's request. I just want something that is like very bold, very strong, and very much readable, because I usually have a very hard time reading subtitles whenever I'm watching videos. So I would like to avoid that. Our next question comes from @HinaVTube, and they ask, could you please show all your transitions? I've seen some comments about the panning. How about the zooming out into the smaller frame? As for my transitions, usually I just use that keyframe trick, whether it is inwards the stream or outwards of the stream. But there are some other transitions that I could use always, such as the free software plugin called Mr. Horse, which was one of the first plugins that I ever installed, and it has helped me a lot learning about transitions and how to utilize it. So if you're looking for a free plugin that could actually save you a lot of time and effort, because they all not only have transitions, but they have sound effects and other things as well, which you could also learn and utilize for your own sake, I would heavily download Mr. Horse. As for the zooming out into the smaller frame, how I usually do that is by, first of all, nesting the video so that I can have a complete edge and control over the frame that I want to showcase and work with. Then I will be adding keyframes, specifically 3 keyframes. One for when the scale is at 100%, and that means that you see the entire video normally. One for the video when it is at 80% scale, and one for when the video is at around 70% scale. And the timing and the spacing could differ based on the length of the effect in this case, but usually what I like to do is have a fast zoom out in the beginning and then a slide zoom out across the rest of the footage. Now this of course can change based upon the context, so please do keep that in mind whenever you are editing. And lastly, we could not forget the background, where I just use a normal rectangle that I have colored on my own as a baseline usually, and I could just change its color with tinting, or even just by creating my own graphic slot inside Premiere Pro usually. Our next question comes from @I'mFrosty_X, and they ask, how can we seamlessly make background music not sound overwhelming? Lower the decibel is all I can tell you, because if you feel that it's right, then it probably is right. And if it's not, people will tell you, and then you'll just learn to tune it up a bit in the next video. That's how I learned, and that's honestly the best possible way we can learn as well. because there's no certain spot or sweet spot that is universal for all background musics, since every background effect is completely different from one another, and what works in one might not work in another. Always try to trust your gut in what feels right and what doesn't. And never forget, asking people for feedback never really hurts, so you could also go for that route as well. Our next question comes from @eclipse_icy, and they ask where to go to learn the basics of editing. Google, YouTube, and friends if any of them edit, or people online if you have contact with that kind of sense. I'm a self-taught editor, and I learned from YouTube because I was too bored to stay in class, so I found another way to procrastinate, and somehow that ended up being what it is, aka video editing. So that is my take on this one. Our next question comes from @botraj, and they ask, can I get a 7-hour video on how to do audio stuff? Thank you. No. Our next question comes from @malumivt, and they ask, where are the real questions? How do you pan so seamlessly, and how do you do the camera shake? Now for panning, I use an effect called transformation or transform. Now this effect on its own does nothing because it is just the same essentials that you have with every single video edit, where you can move the edit, change it, and just scale it in or out. However, it can be used as a good and safe way to keep the original footage safe while you mess around with it when it comes to scaling inwards, outwards, and motion as well. Combine that with some keyframes as well as movement, which is very comprehensible and not too hefty on the frame. A good example would be moving from the center of the video to the right or center to the left, and not from the extreme left to the extreme right, as that will sound a bit too fast and it might not be as preferable in some cases. Another thing to learn and to always try to keep in your mind is to always do the keyframes for motion on the anchor point and not on the position, because the position moves the footage around the anchor point. But when you're moving the anchor point itself, you're essentially moving the entire footage, and that will produce the original speed that you might desire when it comes to keyframing, motion, and panning when it comes to video footage. Also, don't forget to mess with the camera frame shutters. That could help create a more of an interesting blurry effect in a lot of cases. And our last question is asked by @YarmiVT, and they ask, when long-form video edits like gameplay focused, how do creators pass you the videos? Uncut in a big G drive? Also, how come when editing gameplay and you like zoom in or just the model, quality stays the same? No pixelation whatsoever. And they followed it up with another question asking, how do you make the effect on the face like this? Have you tried adding filters meant for people's faces to be applied on VTwing model? If so, plugins, manual editings, etc. Thank you. To answer the first part of the question, usually if the video is more than the size to be sent over on Discord, they just send it to me via a Google Drive, because that is easier for them and for me. As for the second question, when it comes to editing video, the quality does go down. It is just because I am zooming quite quickly either inwards or outwards that it feels seamless, which is one of the main things that I take pride in a lot of the times. Not to mention, pixelation does happen, but whenever I try to zoom in as well without very heavy zoom ins or zoom out, I try to make it as subtle as possible. So the zooms will be very, very slight, where you feel like you're moving towards the character, but in reality, you are barely moving inwards whatsoever. So at the end of the day, it is how you portray the video that matters the most, because pixelation will happen no matter what, and you just need to find ways and solutions around it that could possibly be something that will help you out down the line. And as for your last question, the effect used in this video is called spherization, and to use it, I just write sphere and then copy it and just paste it on the video footage. Naturally, I move it around and increase the scale to make something out of it, but that is just the general aspect of how I utilize it. As for filters, I usually don't have any filters specific for human faces to be applied on VTuber model. Whatever I have, I just use, and if it works, then so be it. And if it doesn't, I'll just put it aside or utilize it in another way. Always stay creative and never say no to anything, because there is nothing such as an impossible in this field. Thank you very much for taking out of your time, everyone, to ask me these questions and inquire genuinely about this topic. It is always a pleasure to try and help you guys out and also display information for you to watch and see. As always, be safe and be well, and have a lovely rest of your day. Bye bye!